Okay, so now that we have uh, created a Mongo Atlas account and we have connected to it in a terminal or in a shell, we're going to go through some of the commands to learn how to work with Mongo. And so, the documentation on their website's pretty great. Big fan of MongoDB's docs. And so, that's where a lot of this comes from. You know, um, we're going to do some basic commands and a lot of different querying, CRUD operations, etc. A lot of these are also noted in the quick start that we've kind of provided. But we're just going to kind of walk through some commands here. Now, the one command that we ran at the end of the last video is show databases. And so what we're looking at here is a bunch of sample databases. Any one of these databases has a bunch of collections in it. Again, remember, databases and collections are your tables. Um, and notice it's kind of prompting here for a test database. Now this test database doesn't exist. If I were to like put some new data into a collection here, it would essentially create this database for me. But yeah, test does not exist. Um, if I, again, so if I want to CLS to clear my screen and just run that show DBs, we can then use and start typing sample M, and that's going to be mflix. Now I hit tab, and that'll kind of allow me to, if I type in the word sample and I just continually hit tab, it'll kind of show me all my options. If I type M and then hit tab, it'll fill in mflix. So now you're going to notice we're not using test anymore. Now we're using sample mflix. And so now we're looking at one of those sample databases. So I'm in a different um, I'm looking at that database. Now I can show collections and look at all of the different collections. So if I want to use one of those collections, of course, um, we can do that. Now, um, in SQL, there's kind of a select star. And so if I were to select star on a sample mflix, so we're to show DB, that's this database, dot movies dot find, and that's gonna ping all of my movies. And so you can see that wasn't super fast, but that's kind of like a select star on my uh, movies collection, right? So that's returning a whole lot of data, and you can kind of see as I scroll here how much data that is. Um, so but that's kind of jumping forward a little bit. Let me go ahead and CLS to clear screen, um, and let's start with um, show DBs. Maybe we want to create our own database, and so to do that we have to insert some data into um, into a database, and so again, you can kind of come back to the quick start and see how to insert uh, a piece of data. And so the syntax for inserting one document is db dot the name of the collection dot insert one. And so maybe I want to create a users database. Um, and so we'll do CLS. So we'll say db.users.insert1. This is a method, and it accepts a JavaScript object, name, Evan, curly method, parenthesis, enter. We get an acknowledge of true, which is what I'm looking for. And you'll notice it generated an object ID for us. So remember we talked about yesterday, Mongo doesn't have auto incrementing IDs. Instead, uh, it uses um, object IDs, which are essentially GUIDs. Now, if I go to show DBS, uh, let me show collections. Oh, because I was in Mflix, it just created that in there. Let me do a find, db.users.find. Um, Hold on a second. One second here. Take a look. So far, so good.
Yeah, I'm following along.
Yeah, I forgot to use. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is insert a more complex user, and so let's insert one, uh, name of Grant, age of 25. Not sure how old Grant is. Um, we'll set an address, which is a nested object, which will have a street property, 25 Rankin Lane inside of quotes. And we'll have an array of hobbies. Hobbies is an array of strings, which will say golfing and uh, chess, which are actually my hobbies, but we'll credit them to Grant. And there's the end of my object, and there's the end of my method. And so this is kind of cool because, again, relational databases can't have arrays of data in them. There we go. And if I select star, now you can see I've got three users. We got Evan, we got Evan Gudmestead, and we have a Grant with some data in it. Okay. Next thing I want to do, right, if you have multiple objects you want to insert, we can do, instead of a insert one method, again, insert one, it looks like JavaScript. So the idea is, that this Mongo query syntax is very similar to what you might write in JavaScript. Again, this is something that you'll do later on in the class. We'll say DB, users collection, insert, instead of one, we'll insert many. And it's a parenthesis here. We're going to accept an array of objects. And so object one, comma, object two, kind of coming in here, name of Jack and Jill. Jack, name of Jill. And dot dot dot. Oh, I know what I did. Let me control C. I forgot a parenthesis. So the insert many is a method, you have to close it. So open the parenthesis, open the bracket, open the curly, close, close, close. Okay, there we go. Now we get two objects inserted. And if I do a find on my users, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 users. Okay, I went ahead and typed in just two more users, and they're a little bit more complex, so I didn't record it. I think I got my syntax correct. There's ends up being a lot of curlies and parentheses, and it's nice enough. You can get some color coding, and when you kind of hover your mouse over it, you can see that's a closing parenthesis to the beginning of my insert many. That's the closing of my users array, since I'm inserting an array of users. That's my first user, who's Charles Corrigan. That's his address that he lives at. So all this is lining up properly. Um, we're going to separate my objects with a comma, so that looks good. And there again, that's all lining up. So I think that command should work. Acknowledge true. And you can kind of pause and verify all that. But I've got an Ashley Reddick, and I've got a Charles Corrigan. I've got a Grant, I've got a couple Evans inserted. So now I've got a few more users to query. Um, and so we're going to start searching our data that way. Okay, so the next command, again, kind of clear screen, select star if I want all users. If I just want maybe the first 3 users, you could append a dot limit, and you could see that would return just the first 3 users. So limiting your results can be a useful method to append. And the other option is a sort. So we could sort on a name property in alphabetical order. And so what that looks like, db users find dot sort, and this takes an object to say, hey, I want to sort on the name in ascending order. Not short, but instead short. Sort. Parenthesis. And now you can see it puts Ashley Reddick up at the top, Charles, Evan, Grant, Evan and Evan, Grant, Jack and Jill. And then if I just change that 1 to a -1, not -11, you're going to see the descending order, which is what you would expect. And then you could tie the two things together with a limit. And get Jill, Jack, and Grant. All right. We could also, let's get rid of our limit. We could sort by multiple things. So let's sort by name, but let's also sort by age. So we're going to sort by age descending. And then if 2 users have the same age, then we sort by name ascending. So kind of start with age descending. You see 60, 38, 38. But that because 2 users have the same age, Ashley Reddick comes before Evan, right? So we sort by age descending in first, and then name ascending second. Okay, there's also a skip method. And so if we bring back one of our, bring back our last command. So we'll just, and let's append skip. And so you can see it skips our first user, Charles Corrigan. So if I clear that again and skip 2, it'll skip our first 2 users. So limiting, sorting, skipping, those are all useful methods to append to a find um, to return a lot of the data. And then pretty soon we're going to start modifying our find method. Okay, and so what that looks like, db users find. Now you put a little object in here. Find the name of Evan. And so it returns the 1. Now if I put that, returns that user. So it was an exact match. So my query of find Evan only found the user Evan. It did not find Evan Gudmestead, but if I put it in the full name, it did. Okay, there's another syntax. If I show kind of like the simple syntax that we already did, right? So we just do a find. There's an operator that um, can that will use um, to help us write more advanced queries. And so I'll rewrite this same query just a little bit different. db users find object name colon, put another object here, close curly close parenthesis, and $eq colon Evan Gudmestead. And these two things are going to return the exact same way. And so you might wonder, like, why, why would you ever write it the second way? And that syntax, we're going to learn, not only can you find things equal to, you can say, okay, find users with an age greater than 9 or greater than 21 or, greater than or equal to. And so there's kind of an implied thing that's happening here, which is this equals method is being called here automatically. But as we begin to write more advanced queries, this $eq equal to, we'll replace that with greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, all those comparison operators that we're used to in the programming world. We can implement those when we bring in this $eq method. Okay, so we're back from a little lunch. Going to kind of wrap this up, covering a few more topics, not only on how to query data differently, but then we'll wrap it up and do an update and a delete. So we already demonstrated insert, and we are demonstrating a bunch of different ways to query data using find. Then we'll do update and delete, so we'll do all the CRUD operations. And so we kind of left off looking at what was called a query operator. And so the last thing that we did before our little lunch here is we wrote this query a little different using this query operators equals. In the quick start, there's a link to all the different query operators that are out there. And so you could see equal to, greater than, or equal to GTE. There's one called in, which will match any of the values in an array. Less than, or equal to, not equal to, NE. And NIN matches none of the values in an array. Then there's logical operators. There's, just as you're used to, ands and ors, as well as nots and nors. And so the NOR is like a NOR gate from electrical circuits. Um, There's a lot of other ones too, to see if something exists, the type, so on and so forth. You can write a regular expression. You can perform a text search, and so we'll definitely kind of come back to this in our lab. This is definitely something you want to be aware of, bookmark, um, and so I'll do that, and I'll put it in my MERN resources folder, because this will really help you write a lot of different queries using all of these what are called query and projection operators. So kind of to bring it back in here, um, you can see I've got my user of Evan, and when we search for the name equal to that, we can also search for the age. Now notice the age is not in a string, right? So if I go to age equal to 38, let's not put it in a string. And you can see I get my two users that come back because, well, of course, it's a number. It's not a string. If I watch what happens if I put that in a string, you're going to see we get no data back. And so it does kind of do a type search. The types have to match the data types. Um, So we did a find all, find with a one property. Let's see what happens. You can match multiple documents by multiple conditions by adding additional pairs. Um, and so let's try to find with name, comma, or age of 60. So doesn't work. It's essentially saying, hey, Evan has to be so this is kind of the equivalent of an and, right? So if I did a find a user by the age of 60, that should return, I think my Charles was the age of 60. There you go. Right. So when you're looking at this, where you're providing multiple conditions, it's kind of like an and. The name of Evan Gudmstead and the age of 38. So um, that's how that line works. Those were your operators. Let's do a like an age greater than or equal to, right? So if I kind of do a db users find age dollar sign greater than equal to 40. And so that's my one user that has an age greater than 40. If I say grade age greater than 20, you can see it returns a bunch of different users, which an age greater than 20. So that's greater than or equal to, of course, less than or equal to also works. So there's your GTE, or selects all products within a category of hats or shoes. Um, so let's do a find star db users find. So this is all of our data, and we have hobbies. Anyone else have hobbies? You've got hobbies. So hobbies is an array, and we have hobbies of golfing, and we have hobbies of fishing. Okay, so let's kind of db users find hobbies curlies dollar sign in golfing. Close, close, and I need one more parenthesis to close. Okay, so that brings up Grant. If I put a comma, let's do fishing. That brings up uh, any user that has a hobby of golfing or fishing. And so Grant has a hobby of golfing, Charles has a hobby of fishing. So that's demonstrating the in. And that's, those are your basics of querying data. Obviously, it gets more advanced when you start getting into um, some of these other ways of like, and we'll do this in the lab. This is kind of cool, um, where you can, like, if you've got some, latitude and longitude, like find all of the buildings, you know, within a certain a distance of, you know, this latitude and longitude. So we'll get into some of this other stuff in our lab. But for the most part, for most of the stuff we'll be doing, they'll be keeping it pretty simple. Now, so that's querying documents. Next up is updating. Updating is a little bit more complex because it actually, if you look at the syntax of an update, the method is called update one, and there's essentially two um, parameters. The first parameter is a JavaScript object that is kind of like your select object. So we're going to be finding an object here. This is which object are you going to update, and then this is what you're going to update about it. And so an example of this is essentially our find. So the first argument here is our find. We're finding a name of red cowboy hat, and we're updating the price with a $ set. Okay, so maybe let's clear the screen. DB users find. Maybe I want to update this user of Evan to change the name to something else. So DB users update one curly. So that's the first argument, comma, second argument, and the method. Okay, so we're gonna search where the user's name is Evan. We don't need that EQ syntax. And we're going to $set colon name colon uh, sure. And we'll also add an age of 90. And so there's an update operation, acknowledged as true. And now we can do oops, typo. Let me do a show collections. Inserted ID of null. It's interesting. Let me DB users find. Yeah, it did not actually run my update because the find never worked because there was no uh, collection by that name. And so let's try that one. Modified count of 1. That's what I was looking for. Here, modified count of 0. Now, modified count of 1 because I got rid of my typo. DB users find. And now my user object has been updated. So yeah, updating is a little bit more complex because it requires the two arguments. Um, Again, you can read about more of the update operators using this quick start guide. And finally, delete. Now, delete is nice because it takes a single. Uh, this delete one takes a single. Delete many deletes many. Obviously, the delete one takes a single query document, just like the find method. So if I were to clear the screen, db users delete one curly name of Andreas, acknowledge true, delete count one, db users find. You can see that my user Andreas is now gone. And that is the delete. So we've done some CRUD operations in Mongo. Um, and that's basically what you need to kind of prep you for the lab. The lab 0201 should be available on Inside Rankin. Grant, can you confirm that you can have access to this document? Okay, great. So I'll end this video here, which kind of covers those basics of querying and working with data in Mongo, and then we will get into this lab.